This is a little bit more than 2 years that I'm an owner of the Yong Heng. Again, I may not be pronouncing that correctly, but just to give you what you should know about this compressor as far as my experience with it. I'm going to tell you, bottom line is, so that there's no suspense, this does what it has to do. For somewhere around $265 to $300, depending on where you shop. And yes, these are available at Walmart. One other thing I want to note that I just noticed when pulling up the pump on Walmart is that Walmart is the authorized dealer, because they have an authorized agreement on their website, as well as a 3-year warranty and a 4-year warranty. 3-year warranty is $34. The 4-year warranty is $45. Wow, I wonder if that says something about the quality of the Yong Heng now versus when it first came out. The high pressure stage seems to be a lot better and a lot more durable, so that piston with the O-rings seem to be made of a better material. At least that's what I'm seeing so far. So it's quite interesting that Walmart would agree to service this, knowing that there are so many issues. I mean, if I buy this from Walmart and I pay for the 3-year warranty, if anything goes wrong, you can bet I'm going to bring it back to them. This is the second one I now own. So the first one went for about 1 year, 2 months, 3 months. This one is just about going on a year. And I do have to tell you, there is a difference between this second compressor I'm now owning versus the first one in, most importantly, the top piston, the high pressure. There's a 2-stage here. In the second stage, it appears that the material they're using on the O-ring is holding up a lot better. And here's why I say that. On my first compressor, I noticed a drop off. What I typically do is I top off an 88 cubic foot tank. Let me show you what that looks like. So this is my 88 cubic foot tank that I top off from 3,000 to somewhere around 4,200 PSI. Now, please remember, this, I mistakenly said it, and a lot of people continue to mistakenly say this. This is a 300 bar, not a 310 bar. 310 bar is 4,500 PSI. 300 bar is 4,350 PSI. So if you're pushing this to 4,500, well, you're pushing it a little bit beyond its capabilities. I even feel that 4,200, I listen when this is running in my garage, I can listen to the piston and I hear it changing pitch and tone as the pressure starts to build. I hear it struggling a little, but it does well up to about 4,200, 4,300. I really have had no problems. So the first one I had, that upper stage gave, that upper stage O-ring started to wear out because I noticed it was taking longer and longer to top off this tank. Going from 3,000 to 4,200, it used to take 8 minutes at first. Then I noticed as time went on, it was going on to 12 minutes, 14 minutes, and eventually to top off this thing was taking me about 20, 22 minutes. So that told me that the high pressure piston O-ring was probably gone. So I tried to take it apart. That was my first one. And here's a little video of that. As I was taking it apart, I broke the upper piston, but it's okay. And rather than replacing it, I decided to just buy another one. Here's that video. It's having an issue getting started. So when it's plugged in and we try to start it up, it stalls. And I know this is a common problem with these Yong Hengs. I've seen a bunch of videos and heard of other people having these issues. Well, now after about a year and a half, I am now having that same issue. So what I'm going to do today is try to take it apart, see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay, that wasn't good. Well, I did manage to bend the piston now. Okay. Okay. So, looks like I bent the piston. See how easy it is. Be careful when you're trying to. So let's put this back here. and put this up top here. When you're trying to remove one or the other, be very careful. Maybe it's better not to take this piece off first. Probably take the cast iron fins here, take the cylinder, bottom cylinder base off first. You know, what I did was tap it very gently with a rubber mallet. So when you crack it off, the entire piston will come out straight rather than, and you can let it just sit there for a moment, or, you know, it just comes out very, very easily. And let that sit there. God, it's almost a shame. It's such a nice, I really think these are, you know, fairly well built for the price point. It seems like I have a bad motor. Now, if I really wanted to, I could probably get the piston for, I don't know, 30 bucks, 40 bucks and get a new motor for 50 bucks, 60 bucks, something like that. But if I'm going to spend 100 bucks, rebuild it, you know, it's all worn out, just spend I mean, for me, I'm just thinking for 150 bucks more, I'm just going to buy a new unit. So as you saw in the video, when I was trying to take this piece off right here, this is the first stage, this is the second stage, this is really the second stage. I broke the piston inside, and well, guess what? That first machine, that first compressor became spare parts for this one. So not all was lost. And when you really think about it, for around $280, roughly somewhere in that range, you know, it's just worth. I really didn't have a problem going and getting a second one and now being more careful when I service this. So when I was servicing the first one, I kind of learned what not to do, and that's what I wanted you guys to see. Now, so more importantly, what I learned about, you know, using water to cool down the upper second stage piston, as you can see here, there's, you know, you have an in and an out, and the water flows. I think it goes from up to from down to up. There is a chamber around the piston, and here, let me show you. Here is the piston. Here's the top piece. Would be something like that. Well, however, so you take that top piece off. All right, the high pressure piston would be in there, and if we just turn this, this is a sleeve, as you can here. Let me just show you what that looks like. Okay, and that sleeve comes off. There it is. Okay. Now what I learned is look at all that pitting. Now aluminum doesn't rust, but it does pit, and there's all that hard residue, calcium, I guess from the water I use here in New York and Long Island. I don't use the good reservoir water. We use underground water, which I'm sure many people, if you don't live near a reservoir, you use groundwater. And this was the result. So it's a bit of a problem. So you have to open it up. There's 2 O-rings to keep the water from coming out, and you might want to clean that. So what I do here, let me put that back together. Here, okay. Now, so what I'll do is once the compressor is cooled down, I'll blow out the water, the remaining water inside and around the piston, and I open this one up, and it was pretty clean. There was a little bit of pitting, but not much. And like I said, we're going on about 11 months for this second compressor. Another thing I want to talk to you about is I get asked the question often, should I buy the auto stop version or the non-auto stop? Now, you see here that there's an auto stop dial. This is this is not the auto shut off. So what happened, and again, there's always issues with these compressors, and it's okay because you learn how to deal with it. So I took the spare part from my auto shut off, I cut the wire that was down here, and I put it there because the other one was leaking. Not a big issue. So my first compressor had an issue with the power relay burning out, and I had smoke coming from the machine. It wasn't a big deal, but this is what the power relay looks like. It is from Binder. Here's a close-up of it. This is what the power relay looks like, and this is what controls the auto shutoff. So when the pressure gauge, there's a dial inside, when it hits the metal of the auto, wherever you set the stop pressure at, let's say like 4,200, it's supposed to send a signal through this wire to this power relay to shut down the unit. Well, it didn't work so well. So eventually I bought a second one. I rewired it. Here's what it looks like, okay? And I even wrote this is not the correct relay. I bought this one as a replacement, but it wasn't the correct one. So I went and purchased the actual correct one. And they actually have this on AliExpress as the correct upgraded power relay to replace this one here, the binder one, binder, okay? My thing is, I just decided I don't want to use the power relay. It is just too much of a headache. You know what, I don't leave this unattended anyway. So that is the issue with the power relay on the auto shutoff. I would recommend not going for the auto shutoff. It's just, you know, less to go wrong. There's no power relay underneath here. It's just directly wired to the motor. Very easy to use. I've also been asked, what type of oil do you use? Some people use motor oil. I happen to use hydraulic oil number 46. I think this is what's recommended by the manufacturer. Here is a quick look at it. Again, mine is I bought this on Amazon. Shield AW46 hydraulic oil. Has anti-wear, anti-corrosion, anti-foam. So again, this is metal on metal. And actually, the piston, there's the main shaft, which is surrounded by the piston crank, which kind of goes up through this hard, dark black area here, finned area. And what happens is you have aluminum on steel. And I would think that the aluminum is not as hard as the stainless steel. And so you're going to have some wear, but this seems to do very well. When I took apart the first machine after using it, oh my goodness, maybe 80, 100 times. I don't know the exact number, but I really beat the hell out of that thing. I got my money's worth out of it. And when I took the crank arm off the shaft, it was tight and it was in good shape. So it held up very well. And I seriously recommend using the hydraulic fluid instead of motor oil. Now, another thing, what happens with this hydraulic oil, I've noticed, and I want to show, this is really, really important. I'm going to bring it over to this camera. So this little air, cotton filter here that holds, they call it a water and oil separator. I actually have one in there, if you can see, and it's actually quite dirty. I replaced that cotton filter almost every fill now, just because it seems to keep the water out. I did have my tanks inspected, and there was no water in my tanks. Great. I'll talk to you about the water molecular sieve that I put together a little bit further into the video. But for now, definitely replace this cotton filter every time. Now, here's another thing. So I took this off here. This is already loose. I'm going to show you what happens with corrosion and rust over time. Okay, so this is also loose. Now here, I'll take it off here on this camera so you can see. Look at how filthy, rusty. Look at that. Okay, that is in terrible, terrible, terrible shape. I mean, it is rusted out. Aluminum doesn't rust. That's the rust from the cable here, the fill whip. So I'm not worried about the aluminum. This part, even if it's ugly, can be cleaned up very easily. So this little piece of aluminum here, this is an awesome, awesome, no issues. I mean, this is made of, I believe, brass, and I took this top piece off. So if I take out this little cotton swab or tube here, there is nothing inside. I mean, you can see how dirty that is, okay? And down at the bottom, there's nothing. Because what was at the bottom is the fill whip. So this is just a piece of aluminum which is in great shape. Clean it up and you could reuse it. So this is not an issue. One thing I would recommend is changing the fill whip because, again, it's all rusty. I don't know how the integrity is. On this end it looks okay, but on this end where the water, because you get water buildup in here, and if you leave that cotton swab, if you leave this cotton tube in here, that water sits in there and it's going to rust it out. So either you take the cotton swab out right away and open this up, okay? Here you go. And then when you pull the cotton swab out, just dry up the inside in here, with a paper towel or something, and that'll keep it from, keep this from rusting. That's what you could do. Now, what I did, went on AliExpress and purchased for $21, I think it was $21 or $22, a complete kit that comes with a new fill whip. Here, I'll open it up for you. So here I'm opening it up. This is actually hasn't been opened yet. Okay. All right. So what does it come with? The kit comes with two new bleed screws for the water side and the bleed side. A new ventilator for where the oil goes. O-rings, the high pressure O-rings. 5 cotton swab replacement. I mean, I bought a bag of them. You can, again, buy them on AliExpress for a few dollars. But more importantly, a brand new fill whip. Clean. I don't know if there's anything. Let's see what's in here. Oh, there is one in here. And it looks like it's dirty. Look at this. So they've tested out. There's a little bit of dirt. This is from the factory. But it looks nice and clean inside. Here you go. Take a look. If you can see inside there, it's really nice and clean. Okay? And some burst discs, the Delrin O-ring, regular O-rings. It's basically a whole new set to rebuild. This is a whole rebuild kit. Just do a search on AliExpress for Yong Heng products, and a lot of these things will come up. Anything O-rings, the cotton, bag of cotton swab, the cotton tubes here. Anything you need can be gotten. Now, one note, just remember to make sure you order everything in advance, because it does take sometimes 30 days to get to you. So if it's kind of prime shooting season, and you need to keep your PCPs full, and you need to keep your big tanks full, well, you're going to be waiting a month if you wait to the last minute. So I would recommend ordering a package of backup parts, rebuild kit, in advance when you get your Yong Heng compressor. Along the lines of how does the Yong Heng compare to those more expensive compressors, I will say it gets the job done, but you're going to have to put a little bit of effort. Not much. You just have to be a little bit mechanically inclined. Just don't over tighten anything. Don't strip any. These aluminum blocks. This is parts from my my first compressor. This is the high end block here on this end. Okay, and this high-end block, what I've noticed is a lot of oil, hydraulic oil, builds up in here, and it's quite dirty. So, do I recommend cleaning it? I mean, I guess you could. Here, let me just show you. Let me just take this apart. So this is the high-end input. Whoa, look at that. Okay, see how rusty that is? Rusty, and so it tells me water is and obviously we know water is getting through because it's ending up on that cotton swab that comes out of this block, the high pressure block. Now look in here, there is a check valve. Here it is. Look at the damage. Look how bad that check valve is, okay? It is rusted. The O-ring, the green O-ring, which is usually a 90 durometer, it's a high-end one, is completely corroded. I mean, this needs to be changed. The spring is corroded. And inside this block, it's terrible. I don't know if you can see anything in there. Let's see. Hopefully you're seeing something. But this is the issue. And by the way, when I got this second one, the first thing that failed after about 3 fills was this exact check valve. This is the check valve part, okay? This doesn't allow air to back up into the piston. Let's see. So this check valve doesn't allow, as you can see, there's an O-ring. It's very, very, here, let me bring it a little closer. This O-ring is completely covered, and there's a beveled part in here. What happens is this fits perfectly. So this is on this part right here. So what you're seeing close up is this part here. So this is, the airflow is going this way, which opens up the check, here, opens up the check valve, and doesn't, what happens is if the air stops flowing, it shuts so that the air doesn't back up and put pressure against the high pressure piston. Now the piston inside there is really not that beefy. It is quite, like I say, it's delicate, but it really isn't built to industrial standards. So that is why they have this check valve here. And like I said, this was one of the first things that failed. And you got to be careful. So that's something to note, that the oil and water does get through the system, and you're going to need to either clean it out. And there's really not much you can do except continually bleed on the right side of the Yong Heng, bleed out the water and oil every, I do it every 4 minutes, 5 minutes, give it some time to build up. But unfortunately, it leaks through the system. This is not a precision system, but again, it does what it has to do. It fills my tanks. and with the proper precaution using the cotton filter. And what I like to use is this Tuxton gold filter. Now, there's a bunch of these out there. There's even more advanced ones than this that have a bleed valve already put in place. The way this gold filter works is basically the high pressure side, which has the cotton filter, like it's like a first stage for the really dirty stuff, connects to this end here, and then your other filter, your other quick goes right to your tank, or the way I have it, it goes to my CGA 345 with a bleed valve at the top here, and that will go on this end. And this CGA 345 goes right onto the fireman tank. Let's see. This filter really needs to it needs to stand up so that any of the moisture will fall to the bottom back here. And really there should be a bleed valve. On AliExpress and Amazon, they actually have a more updated version of this with a bleed valve built in. So they thought of that. It's around $120, and here, I'll put a little link to it right here so you can see it. It's really works well, but I have had no problem. And by the way, in this particular setup that I have made my own desiccant. I'm using micro sieve. Here it is, very simple. I have an O-ring. Now, if you look in there, there's an O-ring, okay, that rests up against this end here. And then there is a PVC tube. There's another O-ring. Let's see. It's stuck. Another O-ring inside here. And this is really tight, okay? This holds molecular sieve. Now, I have only changed this a few times, okay? Again, it's a very simple, it's just a piece of PVC. This is 1-inch PVC, and I have cotton swabs going about 2 inches in on either side with all molecular sieve in the middle here. So the newer updated gold filter with the bleed valve comes with cartridges that you can put inside. They have charcoal, they have microsieve, desiccant, whatever you want. They can make, I mean, I think they come in sets that you could just keep replacing. And anyway, you could see that on Amazon. But this has been working very well for me. Like I said, I have no water in any of my tanks. I have no water issues in my guns. But it is interesting that down here, it's pretty rusty. But that water is residue water left in this side. But so you got to remember, I've got the cotton filter here. I've got the microsieve going through the gold tube. The gold tuxting. I'm not having it. You're not going to have any issues. As long as you have some kind of molecular sieve, system. And by the way, it's very important that they be not loose. You shouldn't hear any noise. They got to be packed tight because you don't want to have any space where the water can make its way through. So I made sure this is super, super tight. And basically I kept shaking it and pounding it, shaking it. So simple. 2 cotton swabs cut for either end. Fill it with molecular sieve. Make sure it's packed tight. O-ring on the inside. Put it in the tube. Now it doesn't matter that this is a PVC tube and it doesn't fit exactly tight. Because remember the pressure, even if it expands, it's not going to crack it. We're talking like, it's almost a perfect, there might be 0.5 millimeter of expansion. Here's the other O-ring that goes right on top there. And what happens is when you screw that flat part in, I can feel it. Yeah, there it goes. It gets tight and you tighten it down. And now what's happening is air shouldn't go around the 2 O-rings and the PVC tube and go on the backside, because then you're having, wet air go around and come out the other side. But that's why we put the 2 O-rings there. Lastly, you're probably asking, why do you have to put a protective sleeve or encapsulate the microsieve, desiccant, charcoal into a sleeve that goes into the tube? Why not just pour it directly in the tube? Well, there is an issue with heat, pressure, and molecular sieve or desiccant that supposedly over time acid leaching can happen from the, wow, this is loose, I got to tighten this up again, can happen from the heat, pressure, moisture that could build up in the tube, and that could eventually deteriorate the wall inside of the tube, and even worse, the threads. If the threads were compromised with that acid leaching and then corroded and weakened, you could have an explosion, possibly, right? So, well, it's not really an explosion, but the pressure, if it builds up so much, the threads could give and it will seem like an explosion, but it'll be a rupture. And you don't want that to happen. So that's why even on AliExpress, Amazon, when you see these packets that they sell that fit inside the gold tube, they are in an enclosure so that there won't be any acid leach. So one addition I did add to my CGA 347 fill adapter that goes here on the end of my SCBA tank, this is a fireman's tank, is so I have a T here. This is everything I have is always try to get everything 5,000 or 6,000 working pressure. Burst pressure will be usually 3 to 4 times that amount. You really want to stay in the 5,000 range if you have a 45. That's just for safety. So I have a T here. I have a bleed valve. This is a 6,000 pressure bleed valve. I have a reducer, and then I have this is the new thing that I wanted to really show you right here at the end. This fill nipple here it is. Sorry, you can't see that. So here is that fill, nipple. It's a quick disconnect, but what's different about it is it has a check valve inside, and there's the check valve piece right there. So that is, let me show you. That is right on the inside, right there. Okay, and what that does is that does not allow air to flow back out. So I'll show you. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to put this connection here, right on the tank. Right now my tank is closed and my bleed is open. I'm going to leave it open a bit. You hear that? It came out. Close this down. All right, so now I'm going to tighten down on the bleed valve here, okay? And no air should come out. When I open this here, no air should come out of here because there's a check valve pushing back. And there it is. So it's open. Check this out. No air. I'm going to bleed it. That's it. It was whatever air was in here. So there are two reasons why I use and like this check valve here on the end of the 347 CGA adapter. So when you're filling your tank, okay, from your compressor, let's just say this was directly connected to the tank, or you have the gold filter in between. Either way, what happens is, the first thing is when you start it, so you can first open up, you don't have to try to balance timing when the pressure on your compressor matches the pressure on your tank. So you just make the connection, open this tank, this part fills with air, right? Your bleed valve is closed, everything's connected. This part fills with air, but no air is going to back up into the compressor because the check valve is holding the air from going back into the compressor. As you start your compressor and the pressure builds in the line here that's connected, it will equalize and eventually overcome the pressure in the tank, and then open that check valve and start filling your tank. It's so simple, so easy. You don't have to think about anything. Less room for a mistake. The second reason now, when it's time to shut down, especially because I'm not using the auto shut-off feature, what I do is I don't have to worry about losing air because you shut this down and the air starts escaping back in or forces its way back through to hit up against the check valve in the compressor over here in this part here. So the second reason I like using the check valve when it's time to shut down. Again, there's been a lot of talk about whether you should, when you're ready to shut down, should you bleed it first, then shut the unit off so there's no back pressure on the piston. But I don't think that's an issue because you have a check valve. But I've been doing that anyway, and it's just a matter of habit for me. I don't think it matters. I believe you can shut it down, then bleed everything, and close your tank. But the way I do it, I first, because I have a check valve here and I know I'm not going to lose any air in my tank, so when this is all connected, all right, and it's time to shut down, the machine's still running, I'll bleed first the water side, get the oil and water out, then bleed the high, all very quickly, shut off the unit, the air will bleed out, but the air will stay here in this part because the check valve is holding it back, and then when it's time, I'll close the tank, and then bleed the air here, and I'm done. So it's really a nice feature to have this check valve, again, for a few bucks. It's a simple little piece, but it does so much. Now, there is also one other great reason for this check valve. So when you have your line connected, everything is connected up. What if your line was to burst, or somewhere connection was to leak? You might lose, I mean, you're not going to lose that much air, but you lose some air. The great thing with the check valve is that if there were a leak, the air would, if it was a big leak, let's say the line ruptured or something, what would happen is the air would just empty out, and it would get stopped here with the check valve because it would be, pushing back, and the air would empty out quickly through here. So if it came loose, it wouldn't whip around and hurt you. So again, it's another little safety feature. I think it's just a great item to add to your fill adapter, whether you use a DIN or CGA 347, whatever you use to connect to your tank. I got this from Amazon, and I believe it's IOR Man. I'll put a link right here, or a picture of it. IOR Man. It's I guess an 1/8 quick disconnect to BSPP. BSPP is the type of thread on the back here. That's a very common thread for paintball air gun stuff. And yeah, I definitely recommend getting one for a few bucks, maybe even 2 of them. They're really great. But remember, you have to use a bleed valve, because if you didn't have this bleed valve here and you connect this and open up the air, how would you bleed the air? It could be super dangerous. So make sure you have a bleed valve. The last thing I want to show you is the fill whips that I use, which I've been using now for roughly about 2 years, and they're great. There's not really any need to go out and buy $200-300 fill whips. I have 2 right here. Hopefully you'll see them right there. And these 2 fill whips were both purchased, one on AliExpress, the other on Amazon. They are, again, rated to 5,000 working pressure. I believe actually this one was 6,000. This one, because of this piece here, was 5,000. It came already assembled for about 50 bucks or less. I think the first one I got for 40 bucks. This second one here with the hand tighten, it has a little O-ring on the end which connects to the CGA 347 by hand, which is great. So if and this has happened to me, you're out at the range, you drive 60 miles, and you don't have a damn wrench to tighten it down. So what are you doing? You're trying to hand tighten as much as you can, but it's leaking air. So this hand tighten one is great. So this is a hex one, and this is a hand tighten one. Remember, when you purchase these, make sure you get the micro bore. I always use 36 inches. It doesn't waste that much air when you bleed it out. It's a micro bore. It's very, very thin. Again, I've had 0 issues with these, and they're priced right. That's why I have 2 of them, a backup. I throw one in my car, the other one's in my bag. One other thing I want to show you is this extended quick disconnect, which I also, by the way, purchased on AliExpress for a few bucks. Here's the difference. What it does is it allows, see how thin that, you have to get your fingertips on? This one allows you to grab it from way down here, like an inch back. This one you got to grab at the very end. And what's so great about it, if you look at it, what's so great about that is, like in my Krall Puncher Jumbo, I put a Yuma regulator and an Altiris regulator. I have 2 of them. And I created this little cover, which now makes me have to stick my fingers inside there, to try to grab it and pull it out, and I was struggling. This makes it a dream. It's really, really easy. So I believe they're called extended quick disconnects. Should find them for about 10 bucks a piece. Again, AliExpress, eBay, wherever. Again, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it gives you some updates. And the bottom line is, yes, I would definitely recommend the Yong Heng compressor for 280 bucks, let's just say. If something goes wrong after a year, take the thing, strip it down for parts, throw it out, recycle it, whatever you do. But you can get another one. Like I said, so far the first one went for a year and 3 months. This second one is almost a year now with no sign of slowing down. I'm still getting, my fill time is from 3,000 PSI to 4,200 PSI on my 88 cubic. I have 2 88 cubic foot tanks, somewhere around 9 to 11 minutes, depending on the temperature and where I really started off, but roughly somewhere around 10 minutes, and it's been holding up. And how many times did I fill? I would say 10 months, probably about 40, 50 times. I'm doing it at least a week at a time. Now, I never had to fill up from 0 to 4,500, 4,200. I always top off. I don't know that these would hold up that well in a, continuous run time. I think they're okay for 10 minutes at a time, 15 minutes at a time. Like I said, I run it for about 10 minutes, let it rest, then I'll fill up the second bottle. So I fill 2 bottles at a time, and it seems to be holding up very well. Again, I hope this helped, and thank you for watching.
Hello. That sucks. Hello.
I'll blow out the water. Let's not do that.
Okay, that wasn't good. Okay.
But the high pressure, what is it? Pressure stage? I just want to get this done. Okay.